Welcome to Gemcast Live number 16. With us today, once again, we have John Resnick writing, and today we'll be hearing from him in reading Velici's story. And first, let's hear from the author about his story a bit, since we'll be picking up in chapter 3.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. So let me just give everybody a little context for what you're about to hear. Um, my story, Blood and Dust, it's a frontier fantasy, sure, but it's not about conquering the frontier. It's about what happens, what comes after, after wars, after people have already done the things that history is going to hold them accountable for. This is not a hero's journey story. It's not a story about heroes discovering who they are. The people in this book already know who they are. The question is, can they live with it? What are they willing to do to protect the lives that they've built since? Violence in this world, it's quick, it's costly. Faith is not comfort, it's obligation. Power is treated with suspicion. Loyalty matters more than glory. Ultimately, this is as off meta as it gets. It's not a power fantasy, and survival never comes without consequences. But the real core of this story is it keeps coming back to this one thing: who gets to decide who gets to be free? What does that freedom cost, and who has to pay the price for that? You're going to get dropped into a world that's in motion, no prologue, no long explanation at the door. Most of the stuff, the history, the beliefs, the worldviews, it's revealed through action rather than exposition. So if something feels unfamiliar, I hope you'll go back and read the rest of the story after today. So if stuff feels unfamiliar, that's intentional. You're meant to learn it the way that characters do, by seeing what happens and what happens under pressure. This chapter, chapter 3, begins on a road with two women who are really good at surviving, and they're really, really tired of having to be. So what follows as they are on this road to Monterey is less about the fight they walk into, and it's more about the kind of people who walk into that fight anyway. So I hope you enjoy it.
Fantastic. I'm super excited to listen to the chapter being read right now. So without further ado, John Resnick writing presents chapter 3 of Blood and Dust. Hopefully he's around. Hey, John, you there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm about to start.
All right, cool.
Chapter 3, The Road to Monterey. The sun had only just cleared the eastern lip of the valley when Rose Tharnan and Marigold Rowan crested the western ridge that ring-fenced Tharnan's Rest. In that pale, slanted light, the ranch behind them looked small, almost fragile, a scatter of low roofs, corrals, and windmills dwarfed by miles of high desert. Rose reined in for a heartbeat, letting her gelding blow. Then she closed her eyes and tasted the morning wind on the wind. Mesquite smoke from the cookhouse fires, the mineral tang of dew burning off limestone, the faintest drift of cattle pen musk, all of it would be gone in another mile. Joseph is probably at the upper pasture by now, she thought, loosening one hand to press a thumb across the scar at her left hip. Sunup meant sword drills behind the barn, then saddle time with the colts. He would busy himself until the moment came to worry. And when that hour struck, he would worry harder than any man alive. She felt the pull of uncertainty that made herself breathe it away. Trust, she reminded herself. Trust and keep riding. Marigold was already edging down slope, seat light in the stirrups, eyes moving. The woman rode like the horse had grown under her legs, knees easy and weight centered. Her hand rested near the scabbard's chape across her back. Rose guided her gelding after Marigold, slower, letting her gelding pick his footing among the shale, scree, and scrubby grass that scraped their boot tops. They had half a day to make Monterey, less if the trainmaster kept to his noon whistle. Monterey kept time by the whistle and the schedule board, not the sun. The rail only ran east twice a week. Miss it, and they would lose 4 precious days. Ahead, the land folded into low limestone knuckles and washes choked with thorn brush. a high country that funneled travelers into narrow draws. Good grazing for goats, better hunting ground for men who preferred their prey soft and unarmed. By the third hour, the wind dropped as though a door had been shut. No cotton-tailed shadows darted across the road, no lizards skittered over the rocks. Even the horses grew twitchy, ears swiveling to track ghosts. "Too quiet," Marigold murmured. Her voice was pitched to carry no farther than Rose's saddle horn. Rose nodded, studying the terrain ahead. A narrow gulch cut the road, shale walls shoulder high, cottonwoods leaning over the lip. Perfect geometry for an ambush. She felt her pulse widen in her neck, an old familiar blooming of awareness. Then dismounted, leading her gelding and the pack mule under a patch of mesquite where the shadows pooled deepest. They worked without speaking. Tie reins short, check the girths and stirrup leathers, loosen cloaks, cinch bootstraps. Each withdrew a slim pouch from the saddlebags. Marigold's fingers dipped into a pouch of dried thessa leaves. She popped one between her teeth and chewed until the bitter resin leaked down her throat. She offered the pouch. Rose mimed the ritual, sliding the leaf into her pocket unseen. Her body did not need the plant's fire, but secrets and attention to detail had kept her alive this long. When they stepped back onto the road, the silence felt cavernous, as though sound itself had been scraped away. Only the heat remained, pressing against their faces, raising the copper smell of dust. Washboard ripples had corrugated the hard pan where carts rattled it all summer. The bandits let them ride almost a mile farther down the road before springing the snare. A lank man in a patched leather coat stepped from the brush, planting himself square in their path. Two heavier bladesmen materialized behind him. On the left, shapes drifted between cedar trunks, polearms, clubs, the glitter of bastard-sized steel. Rose's first count put them at 9. Then up on the rise to her right, the sunlight blinked twice off arrowheads. 2 archers, patient and silent. 11 total. The leader grinned, showing too many teeth in a pock-scarred face. His long sword rode on one shoulder, the way some men carried a bedroll. "Well now," he said, drawl slick with satisfaction. "Aren't we fortunate?" He flicked a glance from Marigold to Rose, as though choosing a cut of meat. "No wagons, no escort. Just 2 sweet ladies with good horses and finer gear than sense." Marigold swung down from her saddle, coat flaring to show worn leather plates stitched beneath. Rose followed, slower, her eyes fixed on the ridge. The air smelled suddenly of sweat and cold iron. "We've no quarrel with you," Marigold said, even and flat. "But Monterey lies that way, and time's wasting." "No quarrel at all," he agreed. "You hand over the mounts, the packs." His smile widened obscenely. "And a moment's entertainment. We let you limp on." "You don't want to do this," Rose told him. She felt the old surge coil in her belly, a tightening that ran up her spine and caught at her scalp. It had been years since she'd let it break leash. The man hesitated half a heartbeat, then swung the sword point toward her breast. "I think I do. Strip." He never spoke another syllable. Marigold lunged, a blur faster than ordinary sight. Her blade drew a silver arc that opened his gut. As he doubled over, she twisted her wrist on the backswing and cut through the sinews of his throat before the first loop of intestine found daylight. He folded, blood pattering the dust like sudden rain. Rose moved in the same breath. She let the nearest halberd slide past her hip, grabbed the haft, and used the man's momentum to jerk him forward. The edge of her boot crushed his knee. As he buckled forward, she brought her short workman's cleaver up into the hollow of his neck, and red mist fogged the space between them. She pivoted as the archers loosed. An arrow hissed beside Marigold's ear. Another thunked off a hidden steel plate beneath her coat. "Ridge!" Rose barked, already diving left. Marigold answered with a throwing knife that spun end over end, spearing one bowman through the clavicle. He screamed and vanished behind rock. The second archer ducked. Steel shrieked against steel, blow, below. A spearman jabbed at Rose. She slipped under, her long knife and cleaver flashing twin comets. The cleaver slashed low through the groin. She ripped it free, pivoted her hips, and drove the knife up between ribs. He fell twitching. A club swung at her head. She ducked, reversed grip, and felt cartilage part as the knife punched into a throat. Two attackers came at Marigold at once. She met both swords together and deflected them to one side. She kicked the first man in the stomach so hard he bent double. As he folded, she reversed her grip and drove the blade into the base of his neck, dropping him. She turned on the second, took him across the belly, and withdrew crimson. The last two bandits broke and scrambled up slope. Marigold clicked her tongue in disgust. She took a steady breath, loosed one knife. It spun end over end into the first man's neck. The second flew a heartbeat later, dropping the other in a staggered silence. There was nothing but the sound of Rose's breathing, ragged and loud in her own head. The wind came up out of nowhere, carrying the hot metal reek of fresh blood. They held the silence for a count of 20, ears straining. Somewhere uphill, gravel skittered, too light for boots, maybe a jackrabbit. Rose forced her pulse downward, drawing the reins on the surge. It cost her more each year. The burn lingered in her chest, a furnace banked but not quenched. She wiped her blades on the nearest man's clothes. Marigold wiped her sword on a dead man's coat. "Archers?" She retrieved her throwing knives from the pair of fallen men. "Gone," Rose said. She lifted her eyes to the ridge. "They ran off, smart enough to live another day." Marigold knelt by a fresh track and straightened. "They'll carry tales. Wish we had the minutes to hunt them." "We don't," Rose answered. She took 3 slow breaths, each shallower than the last, until the tremor left her fingers. Her cloak hung looser around her shoulders. Marigold's coat, once snug across her ribs, now gapped slightly at the chest. The old flush and draw of accelerated burn. What the body gave in speed, it reclaimed in weight. The stillness smelled of iron and sage, blood and sun-baked earth. Already the first flies had arrived, thirsty accountants tallying the fallen. Marigold spat dust. "That Thessa leaf hit you fast." Rose managed a thin smile. "Must be good luck." Marigold's gaze flicked over the corpses. 9 men. Would have slowed a lesser pair. "Slowed us," Rose allowed as she slid her cleaver, then her long knife back into their sheaths. "But not by much." Marigold cleaned her final throwing knife, sheathed it, and glanced skyward. "And cost us time we don't have. Bastards." Rose exhaled through her nose. "We're still good. We can make it." Marigold smirked. "We'd better. I won't wait 4 days for the next train." Despite herself, Rose laughed, a short, rusty sound, and felt something loosen between her ribs. They dragged the bodies off the road, more mercy than warning, piled weapons in a heap and kicked dirt over the blood-slick patches where the ground drank like a drunk at last call. Marigold finished retying her coat. "We'd better move. That whistle you don't hear yet, it's going to be real loud in about 2 hours." The women checked reins, cinches, and the pack mule's load before swinging back into their saddles. By the time they remounted, dark wings were already circling high overhead. The pack mule, slower now under the sun, trailed behind them with clinks of gear against its saddle. Rose and Marigold rode harder then, a ground-eating lope that stretched muscles and rattled tack. The air thickened with growing warmth and the faint salt bite that rolled off the Monterey Basin. Late morning light hammered the stone ridges white. Dust lifted in banners behind them. Conversation came in small, cooling draughts. "You haven't changed much," Marigold offered at one point. Rose raised an eyebrow. "Neither have you." "That's not always praise." "In your case, it might be." "Good to know that Bloody Rose hasn't gone soft playing rancher. Though I saw you favor that left knee after the halberd." Rose shrugged. "Twinge. Comes and goes." The truth was a deeper ache worried her sleep on cold nights, but pride kept those words caged. They swung past the charred ribs of an old cart lodge, abandoned since the embargo closed the coastal supply line. Rose remembered guarding a similar place once, hundreds of miles east, near the borderlands. Freezing on gunny sacks, laughing at smoke-stung eyes and charred mess pans, eating beans burned black, but still better than nothing. Marigold must have walked the same memory because she said, "Hail of a post. I still can't smell tinned beans without tasting ash." Rose smiled. "We were starving, and we still fought over the last bite." A lull settled, companionable rather than strained. The land unfolded into broader slopes, quilted with gray-green chaparral. In the seams between hills, dry stream beds bore the ghost of last season's floods, pale sand marked by coyote tracks and the sun-whitened bones of cattle. "You ever really stop being a Valkyrie?" Marigold asked, not looking over. "I tried," Rose said after a time. She listed the ledger in her mind. A ranch built from raw earth, 3 children raised, 4 laid to rest. "But the world keeps spinning, and we spin with it whether we choose to or not." Marigold chewed that, then gave a small nod. "We're all still carrying it, one shape or another." Clouds banked far to the west, bruised with the coming rain. The faint bite of the coming storm, mineral and sage, and something distant she couldn't quite name, rode ahead of them, layered and heavy. Rose felt sweat dry from formed salt crust at the corners of her mouth. She wondered if Joseph had stopped for lunch under the cottonwood by the south fence, if he looked east and seen the sky thinning where they rode. She wondered if Mackenzie had remembered to eat that morning, or if Mercy had managed to squeeze in a ride for herself between patrols. The thoughts were pinpricks, reminders of the life she'd stepped away from, however briefly. Dawn to midday, 12 miles, ambush to aftermath, 20 minutes. Distance to the railhead, still a hard hour if the ground cooperated. She set her shoulders, leaned forward, and touched heels to the gelding's flanks. "Montrayer bust," she called, tapping the bridle twice. The old signal, "Go light, go fast." Marigold flashed a grin and tapped twice in answer. "Bust is for amateurs." They rode on, twin silhouettes against a sky rinsed nearly white, buzzards wheeling in lazy orbits behind them. In time, the ridge dropped away and the plain opened wide, hot and bright. Far ahead, a telegraph wire sang, a thin, high note in the heat. And somewhere beyond the shimmering horizon, a whistle would soon sound, marking the last ride east they could still claim. Neither woman looked back.
Wow, like really atmospheric. That's what I thought. Fun. So to get to the first question, what time period and culture did you have in mind when you were writing this?
Well, when I first started off, the idea was it was going to originally be based on some of those old Western novels that everybody read as teenagers and young adults. But the reality is, without giving too many spoilers away, this is a future Earth. It's after a cataclysm that's referred to later on as the Scouring. Uh, I guess it wouldn't be too far to say it's at least 2 to 3,000 years in the future. And technology is artificially limited in this world. There's no guns, there's no cannons, there's no gunpowder.
Okay, yeah, I was I was waiting for the for the typical Western guns to arrive. What are some of your influences as far as like books you've read and anything else that contributed to give you like inspiration to write this?
Oh my goodness. I don't know if you got that much time, truth to tell. Uh, Obviously Louis L'Amour and folks like that had a huge impact on the at least the frontier motif. But that said, there's influences from all over the place. There's definitely anime. Um, Man, how much to tell you without giving spoilers? But definitely a lot of folks like to go back to the Western influence. Definitely Mc, Larry McMurdy and the Lonesome Dove stuff was definitely important. Elizabeth Moon, with a lot of her military background and writing, is certainly important, and you see that later on in the book. There's definitely callbacks in this stuff to like the Thin Man, Raymond Chandler type bannering and interplay. Um, how and why there is no gunpowder, that's a huge spoiler. I'll just say by the time you get to about chapter 30 or 40, yeah, you'll understand. But yeah, that's definitely my influences. There's basically the Western stuff. There's definitely some serious science fiction stuff in there. Uh, Cormac McCarthy's The Road definitely played a big part in this, especially once we get later into the book and we start getting out of the Western and more into what I'll laughingly term the soft sci-fi slash horror part of the story.
I definitely got like a sense of like gritty, like I don't like gritty, almost like grim dark medieval western. Like, that's just unique. I thought that was pretty cool. Like, but yeah, you definitely nailed the immersion as far as like the western aspect of it. Like I was
Thanks.
definitely imagining like a flat desert looking plain, like, as they were traveling towards like the train.
Great, thanks. That's definitely what I was shooting for, and I guess one of the challenges for me in this has been trying. I went back when I first wrote it, and I guess I had a lot more white room syndrome, if you will, than in later iterations of this. And then so I went back and said, well, wait a minute, I see this stuff going on here. I have to work on, bringing that to the forehead. So thanks for that.
Um, we have a well, could you talk about the weapons a little bit? Like, we don't have like a specific
Yeah.
question, but like, okay, so we don't
So,
have gunpowder. So,
right.
well, how would you describe the weapons that they have available to them, and kind of like what we would be
Sure.
expecting in your story?
So it's going to be primarily melee weapons and bows. Definitely bows, definitely crossbows. Again, anything that requires gunpowder is forbidden by the church. It's like death penalty stuff. If
Oh, it's
they,
forbidden by the church. Okay.
oh yeah, 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 yeah. There is there's just one religion in this world, and it's run by the church. The church has orders of paladins that are tasked with enforcing the technology regulations. You can see we have some stuff like telegraphs, for Pete's sake, but we don't have anything better than steam engines for trains. So there's definitely some restrictions that are in place. They're guarded zealously.
Okay. And so this is basically the weapons they have are the result of like kind of the environment, right? Like, I mean, gunpowder is out and like they kind of have access to whatever they have access to, or is it
Pretty
specifically these weapons for some reason?
No, no, it's not specific at all. Again, the big restriction is gunpowder and anything explosive. there are, there are it then comes down to human ingenuity. What can you do if you can't blow stuff up? So yeah, definitely. Again, melee weapons, pikes. If you think of it as basically the technology of the mid 1800s without the invention of gunpowder, what would you have had?
Okay, that's a pretty good way to describe it. Um, John, do you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, it was a great read, and I appreciate the opportunity and to bring that a little bit more to life for you. And keep on writing, man. Great story.
I appreciate that, man. You did a fantastic job. I love the voices. And yeah, there are some tongue twisters. Like I said, I apologize that I put you through that, but I think you did an outstanding job and I really loved hearing it.
Perfect. Hope the accents were okay for you. And
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
there's some twisty sentences, but think I got through them okay with a couple exceptions.
Oh, yeah. No, no, it was great. Thank you.
No problem, man.
We do have a couple of setting questions that came through towards the end. Um, what would you say sets your world in the future? Like if somebody were to pick up and read the story, what characteristics like would stand out that they would be able to say like, "Oh yeah, this is definitely set in the future." And also like there's definitely like that old western vibe that's, going through it. Like what drew you to that setting?
Right. Well, and gosh, this was sort of the here was the thing that kind of led me back to that, if you will. Uh, for reasons that are super spoilery, we don't want humanity to be able to put up much resistance to anybody who might want to tell them what to do. That's the nicest way I can think of to put it. So, what would you do if you were going to restrict the freedom of people such that it would be hard to mount an organized resistance? Well, the biggest thing is you would limit the technology they have. You wouldn't let them have access to advanced weaponry. You wouldn't let them have access to advanced technology, things like computers, for Pete's sake. So how do you do that? You turn around and you limit what they can do. What you limit the amount of power, the power systems that they've got. You limit the transportation that they've got. And then once you have that, what sort of environment, what sort of culture would that lead into? And that's what led me back to the Westerns. Um, the way I saw it, after if you go back and look at the real world, yes, they had guns in the 1800s, but once we got past the 1800s and we went into the 20th century, that's when warfare became a lot more brutal as technology started to really advance, right? So if somebody wanted to limit what people could do, they'd probably stop them at about the mid 1800s and take away guns. And then any kind of organized resistance would be very difficult to organize because you wouldn't have communications technology that was super effective. I, more, everything in the whole culture, not just the weaponry, would be affected by your ability to organize, to deal destruction on anything more than an individual basis.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, it's a compelling environment. It's westerns, but like I was like it's basically what Lucia asked. Like it's westerns, but it's limited technology, but some of it is around. So my guess is like without being too spoilery, like the technology's around. They're just not making it accessible. So it would be interesting to read the story to see just kinda like what is around. Like, like I'm just throwing out,
No,
just being
absolutely.
being
Absolutely.
suspicious, like, "Oh, the gunpowder's probably around, they hide it," is a possibility. Who knows what else
So,
is around? Yeah.
man, you're killing me.
Listen, it's
So
about
yeah,
marketing here. It's about trying to, like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
put the
yeah. I
hook
totally get it.
put the
Totally
hooks
get it.
out
Yeah,
there, yeah.
you read the book. It answers a lot of that. But to answer Lucy's question, yes, there is technology. In fact, one of the things about this world is that there are what we will call, I started off calling them vault cities, thank you so much, Fallout. But there are remnants of the prior civilization out there, and there is actually an organized part of the church, supervised by the church, if you will. There's an organization that goes out and tries to play archaeologist, what they call reclamation specialists. They go out to these places and they try to dig up and they try to look for stuff, and that's where the paladins come in because they do find uh, things that are forbidden, such as gunpowder, such as forbidden weapons, and so they're there making sure that whatever's dug up that can be used is used, but anything that's dug up that's not allowed is definitely confiscated or destroyed.
That's
Um,
That's great. Like,
yeah,
yeah, definitely intriguing. Sounds like a good read. Seems like some people in the chat are interested in checking it out. So I hope you guys do. It'll be up on YouTube as soon as Chalco is able to get to it and do the graphic stuff.
cool.
Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you, John, for reading it.
Great. If I can just add one last comment, guys. This first book is going to get finished publishing around the 1st of February, and it's only going to be on Royal Road through the end of February. So if you are interested, if it sounds interesting, man, go check it out.
All right, fantastic. That's Blood and Dust by Felici. Hopefully, you guys check it out. Everybody else, you'll be able to catch this chapter on YouTube. Why don't you check out the story and and we'll see you next week or so for another one of these.